Hey everybody, welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs and baseball podcast hosted by two comedians who live in New York but love the Cubs. I'm one of them. My name is Adam Amawala. As always, I am here with Kevin McCaffrey. Kevin, how's it going?
Oh, it's fine. I guess it'll be. Well, we're gonna say fine for now. Follow us on Twitter at Away Games Pod on Twitter, Instagram, all those things. I say fine because I may or may not have COVID now. I never have. And I've been, I think, among the people in the industry that do what we do, which is stand up and live comedy performance. I have to be elite level safe about stuff. I've got 4 shots and all that, but before I was supposed to fly to Chicago today, I took a rapid, and first time it came back not looking good. So that's what the conflict is here as we begin this. I'm waiting on a PCR test for tomorrow, but I feel more or less fine.
Yeah, you've now officially entered the podcast version of you being on like an injured list that's unspecified, but everybody kind of knows what's up.
Exactly. So it's like my return to activity time is kind of nebulous, whatever. But I could go play in Canada if I was healthy. FYI, I've had all the things, you know.
I mean, I warned Kevin about kissing David Robertson on the mouth, but
yeah. I can't be helped. I'm sorry. The heart wants what it wants, and it wanted old/new Mark Pryor. That's what it wanted.
He is very similar to Mark Pryor mechanically and the high socks. I think it's a combination of those two things.
And the sideburns. I think the specific, those are the exact same sort of sideburns I had in Mark Pryor days, you know, for a long time. I feel like it's a very classic early 2000s look. And I think, the sideburns and the socks really Pryor him up. And it's weird because David Robertson's 37, and that's like not that far off Mark Pryor's age. So when we say he's like new Mark Pryor, they're almost the same age.
They are. Do you think sideburns will make a comeback?
I think so, because I think beards are going to go away a little bit at some point. You know, like beards, I feel like sort of go cyclically. So they're not going to stay around forever. They're not going to be as omnipresent as they are now. You know what I mean? So I think then the beard will go away. It'll leave a little bit of the sideburn. Yeah. But I don't think it's hard to say never, but the really like choppy, thick sideburn thing, I don't see coming back in any sort of mainstream way.
I hope you're wrong about beards. I think you and I are both people who have benefited from beards being on our faces. I think it makes us better looking.
Big time. I think so too. It's a real cheat for the jawline, I think. And I don't know why I wasn't doing that for the longest time, because mine comes in really fast and stuff. But like whenever I was on TV in the past, I always would make sure I was like fully clean shaven for that day, which in hindsight just made me look as fat as I possibly could, like every single time I was on TV until like 2017.
Well, what does it say about the Cubs that we started this podcast talking about beards and sideburns?
I mean, it says, because it's not even a Yankees podcast, in which case that would make more sense. Facial hair would be more of an actual on-field situation. I think it says plenty about the Cubs. I think this week, really, social media can tell you a lot of what's going on with the Cubs, because some of the biggest things in social media this week, like in Cubs Twitter, basically, there's a big to-do about bleacher seating. There's a guy. Did you see any of this, Adam?
I only saw when you tweeted about it from our account, and I didn't know the context. I believe our old buddy Tyler, the pastry man, also was confused, and you were like, "You missed nothing." But no, what happened? Nothing. Is it like some unspoken rule of the bleachers that if you leave to get a beer, someone can't take your seat, and then there was some hubbub about it?
This will be so fast, and we'll get past it. But
that's what she said.
That is, and man, this is really a fucking tantric level sort of bleacher controversy. Please nut and get it over with. This is what this is a bleacher regular had someone sit in his seat, and conflicting reports. He says that the guy was doing it out of spite. He knew it was his seat, and he was trying to take it, and he remained in his seat throughout the rain delay, even so no one could get a shot to get back in there. And if that's the case, to me, that sounds like a big that's a douchebag thing to do, to just sort of spitefully try to steal a guy's seat. The other side is people being like, well, bleachers are general admission, which is true. And should you probably not make that big a deal about it. Yeah, probably also true, I would say. But it's like, I don't know. This has gone on for days. And really what I found most strikingly pathetic was how much, and this is ironic, I understand, as we're talking about it, but people were talking about it on Twitter, nonstop tweeting about it, mostly mad at the bleacher guy for days. And I'm just like, you know what's weirder than being mad about your bleacher seat being taken? Like dozens of other people who have nothing to do with it being super mad and about it. It's like, get your own fucking life.
Well,
like,
it's a microcosm of society, is it not? People being angrier than the actual person affected by a thing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So that I think, again, like us talking about facial hair to open this episode, the Cubs are not giving us that much Cub stuff to talk about. Our friend Joe Kilgallen deleted his Twitter account because
no more recaps.
Yeah, and he said no more recaps. I think he still has his podcast account, but yeah, so it's it's just been like, it's been a tough run, even though the Cubs are up to tied for third in the division now.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That says more about the division than it says the Cubs.
It does, big time. It's the worst division in baseball. And I still, I'm not convinced they'll finish as high as third. But I mean, in terms of positive stuff, Patrick Wisdom's going on 4 days in a row with homers. Which is more consecutive homer days than anybody in baseball this year. So that's nice.
It's very nice. Ian Happ continues to look great. And I mean,
good.
The home run, as we record this on Tuesday, the home run, he hit it last night, which was in a big spot. I mean, the lead had been cut down to 1, and Happ, I mean, I don't think I can recall a louder home run off the bat this year than that. It might have been the way the field was mic'd, but if you listen to that, it sounded like there was a cannon exploding. And it's always cool, I think, for Happ, as a guy who played his college ball at Cincinnati, to play well in that stadium, which it seems like he often does. Then again, a lot of hitters play well in that
That's
ballpark.
true.
But
the Reds are very bad. The fences are close.
They are particularly bad. But when we last recorded last week, it was the day of Christopher Morel being called up, and I feel like that's been a very fun part of the last week, especially his first at bat, which he went all Wilson Contreras on us and hit a dinger and had a lot of fun running around the bases, and just seems to be someone who infuses a lot of energy, and I've enjoyed watching thus far.
Yeah, he sort of fused Wilson Contreras' first at bat with Dexter Fowler's first at bat of Game 7, because he did the thing where he hit the homer, of course, and then he was so jacked up going around first base he missed it, and he had to go back to it, and he was still like pumping his arms around, and then had a whole routine for what he was doing around the bases, who he was pointing at, all this stuff. Was a lot of fun, and like this is a spot where I think and it's very early, but I think I may have been a little too conservative on what Morel is now, getting more of an eye on him. He's had more like good at bats than I thought. Like he's shown an ability to take a walk this year, which he was doing in the minors this year, but that's pretty new to him. And if he's a premium athlete, and I think we've seen that already, right? Like in terms of his arm, some great defensive plays he's made. He started at shortstop yesterday. He started at center field. He started at third base. But if he is a premium athlete with that crazy great bat speed, can add a little patience and a bit laying off balls off the plate, I mean, that really could turn him into a real contributor for a good team.
Yeah, and to that end, I think it's interesting to consider that, if you're looking at a guy who's been in the bigs for 10 years and all of a sudden in his 11th year, he's taking a bunch of walks. To me, that's probably more anomalous. I think for a guy like Morel, it might be indicative of him learning something, right? Or changing his approach as he's working his way up through the minors. So hopefully for him, that's something that's sustainable. Obviously, it's probably harder to lay off pitches when it's the best pitchers in the world throwing against you versus guys in double or triple A. But yeah, he's been a lot of fun. I'm interested to see what happens once guys like Madrigal and Horner are back to 100%. I'm not sure if it's just going to be kind of an automatic demotion through no fault of his own, or if he will have played his way into staying up with the team.
That's a really good question, because as guys, as you say, are like getting healthy, where Nico and David Bodie and Clint Frazier,
right?
It's going to get crowded up there. And Michael Hermosillo also has been injured, and I think he's probably one of the first guys you could see getting squeezed out at this point. Jason Hayward's on the mystery, but not a mystery IL right now too, right? So, yeah,
I feel like for Hermosillo, it could be one of those like the Office Space situations. Like Samir not going to work here anymore. We'll have to Hermosillo later.
Yes, he's going to get the Hermosillo later treatment. The Dodgers will pick him up, and he's going to go 2020 and a half season.
Perfect. Yeah,
basically. But yeah, I think I think Morel just like he provides such cover everywhere that I think even if he does go back down, he's going to come back up pretty quickly, or at least by like the trade deadline when other people are sent out. And sort of Morel and Wisdom both strike me as guys who provide real value, who aren't going to be the star on a championship winning team, but could be a guy that gets, through playing several places, like 400 at bats, or 400 at bats on a real winner, but like winning pieces. And again, it's frustrating to see the Cubs sort of find winning pieces like this when at a time when it helps you less than when the team was very competitive, but the bench was thin and they wouldn't spend money to really get him over the hump, but there's years where like a Patrick Wisdom would have been huge to have on the bench, right, and occasionally starting. And same thing for a Morel, who can just cover everywhere defensively and give you a little bit of, he's hit a couple homers already. He's got some pop. He's stolen a base. He's, he can just do a lot of different things for you.
Yeah, I mean, he hit his first at bat. He hit a home run that I think would have been gone any day, and then his second home run was one that was on that day that the Diamondbacks were hitting pop-ups out. Just a classic windy day at Wrigley, where a ball that should be in the middle of center field is somehow landing in the basket.
Yeah, and that was a day where Kyle Hendricks gave up a homer on, I don't remember seeing exit velocity this low. I'm sure this isn't a record. I'm sure this has happened, but he gave up a homer. I'm fairly certain it was Hendricks. I guess it could have been Norris, but I was looking at the list on a 93 mile an hour exit velocity.
Right.
Like it's just like that's not a home run. It's just not. So wherever the dead balls were supposed to be, we're not there that day. And the wind obviously was doing a lot of the work for the pop-ups that got up in the air. But
yeah, anything under 100 to me feels shocking.
Yeah, and even like right at 100 is a pretty weak home run. So it was a bizarre day, but also it wasn't just the wind with Hendricks. If you looked at the game, he was getting close to putting guys away, and then he kept giving up 2 strike bombs on balls that were like very over the plate.
Right.
He just wasn't finishing it off, and it sucks that we've seen Hendricks go from like great, with the complete game. He's at a couple 7-inning appearances too that were really good, and then a couple where he's just getting, as Ron Darling would say, his tits lit up. And, he
was getting squeezed a good amount also early on, which didn't help matters, but still, I mean, you gotta make pitches. So
it's just not, it's just tough to see him not be as consistent as they need him to be. But that also brings us around a little bit to who is now the pitcher with the lowest ERA in the Cubs rotation, which is Justin Steele.
Yeah, Steele has been great. I mean, this kind of trio of lefties now have been pretty impressive. Wade Miley is super fun to watch because of just the speed at which he works, and even we got the I don't know if there's some sort of obvious shirts for Smiley and Miley, but it's been pretty good.
Yeah, Smiley and Miley have been real good. Real Paul Maholm vibes we're getting off this. Real half season rental, bit of a Feldman vibe maybe. Those are both guys who it's fun to watch. I still, even though at this point it would behoove the Cubs to lose every game the rest of the season, get the first pick, etc. I can't watch a Cubs game and not root for them to win, even if I understand the larger ramifications of the good if they do lose when they're not going to try to win anyway. But I mean, like you see Miley, Smiley, these are guys who you want to be rooting for to do very well, so it ups the return. It gets more teams interested in them at the deadline, because Wade Miley is absolutely a guy a ton of playoff contenders would want to fill out the back end of their rotations right now. And Smiley too. Smiley gave up 3 runs at the very end in the game against Cincinnati last night, but he was pitching great going into that. Like, it was a case where the line didn't really match how well he was pitching. So those guys are both not going to be in Chicago. I mean, like, if plans go according to plan, they're both going to be somewhere else at the deadline. But it's been so fun to see Justin Steele build up not just his stamina, when earlier in the year he was sort of tiring out by the second or third inning. He's going a little deeper now, but even in the game he went 5 innings, he went deep with pitches, and that he struck out 9 in a game after he struck out 10, and we have not seen that kind of strikeout firepower in the rotation in a long time.
Yeah. So what are you, if you've noticed anything, what do you think is making the difference for Steele at this point?
Well, the slider he seems to be really confident with and going to put guys away. If you look at a cut up of a montage of all of his strikeouts, I think the vast majority of them were on that sort of big sweeping slider that he has. Yeah. And then it was interesting. I saw Brendan Miller, and you can find him. He's with the Cubs. He and Corey Friedman would do the Cubs related podcast, and now they're with the CHGO group. But I think it was he who put up a graphic that pointed out that he had changed from 4-seamers to 2-seamers, primarily in between the last 2 starts, which is a little weird because he had a ton of success in both. But I mean, I guess the good thing is if he can make either one work, that's great. And I would say one thing that stood out to me was in the 4th inning. I think it was in the 4th inning last game, he was still popping 94 on the fastball. And that is really what I want to see, because we've seen Justin Steele pitch a lot at 92 and 93. And I think he's got more arm than that. So I think he might just be one of those pitchers who like slowly warms up and brings the velocity up as you get into the summer. And that makes him like the most exciting start to watch in that rotation right now.
Where do you think this leaves Alec Mills once he's ready?
It's a good question, and it's tough to say, right? It's so weird when you have a team, when Alec Mills was like for a while a no doubt starter on a better team, and now this team is not good and it's harder to find a spot for him.
Right.
You know? But I mean, I think you have to I think you probably should find a way to be starting him sometimes. And there's a couple of double headers coming up too, right? Because Mills is another guy who, you know, you might be able to package him in a way that the Cubs packaged like Trevor Williams, who was not having the best year, but when the Mets needed depth in the rotation, they paired Trevor with Javi Baez to get Pete Crow Armstrong. So maybe you're looking at it, even if it's not Mills for the long term, something like that. But Mills is he's a good pitcher. You know, it's not not big velo, but it's an interesting pitch mix, and he's done well, especially out of a starting position. So yeah, it's like I think one thing is like I wouldn't mind if Jed Hoyer jumped the market on one of these starters. You know, like this team isn't going to win. They will not win this year. So I'm fine to look to start trading soon.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because if there are guys like Mills who can fill in and start, even guys like Caleb Killian, who we may see at some point this year, or a Keegan Thompson, who I think you and I are both excited to see what he can do as a starter. I think just like reflexively, teams seem to wait until the deadline, and some of that is like hoping the teams get desperate and overpay. But I also think there's something to be said for like, okay, we are offering you 2 extra months of this person.
Yeah.
What are you willing to give us in exchange? And I guess Hoyer and everyone have been kind of mum on like, oh, will we see Caleb Killian for one of these doubleheaders, that sort of thing. Right. We certainly could. And quick side note, I had a doubleheader yesterday for my softball team that we split, which was good because it was against the other best team in the league. Your boy was 0 for 6 in the doubleheader. And let me tell you something, that does not feel good, especially when in the last game, 2 of the 3 at bats, I don't know that I've ever hit a ball harder, and it was just right at an outfielder both times, and I wanted to break something.
That's massively frustrating. At least when you hammer the ball hard, you know people see it. Like, yeah. So, you know, people are like, I feel like even more so in softball than in like Major League Baseball, you can be like, well, what the fuck can I do? You know, you guys saw I'm doing, you know, you can't place the ball unless you're Tony Gwynn it in the 5.5 hole because you hit lefty.
No, I hit righty. I'm the weird, like I bat righty, throw lefty.
Yeah, you're the Ricky Henderson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty rough. Went into the day, I believe 5 for 11 on the season, and now I'm back to 300. It's not a great feeling.
Okay, what's the softball version of 300? Is it like 400? Would you say?
I think so, because this is like fast pitch softball, so it's not quite as easy as slow pitch.
Okay, so they're doing the whole whip around.
Oh yeah, no, I've struck out in this league, and there's like it doesn't happen a lot, but like no one gives you shit for it.
Right, man. I kind of want to see this now. This is the Gotham Comedy Club team.
Yeah.
Man,
come out.
Do you think I could get passed on the baseball team?
Absolutely. As I have learned, it's much easier to get passed on the softball team than on that stage.
I was gonna say I do shows there sometimes, but
yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I was looking. Maybe Adam's going to get dealt at the deadline. Who knows?
Not if I have too many 0 for 6s. My value is decreasing rapidly.
DFA'd. I'm looking here. I was looking at trying to think of teams that could use depth starting, and it was weird because last year and coming into this year, even the Padres were one of those teams, which is especially weird because they had like so stacked up on pitching. They had traded for Blake Snell. They had traded for Yu Darvish, as we remember well. It looks like they're pretty much okay now. They traded for Mike Clevenger, Sean Manaea. So it looks like they are pretty well settled now. That was one team I was looking at, but you think about the Mets. The Mets have Max Scherzer out for 8 weeks now. The Mets are also already have an 8-game lead in the East, so they're feeling pretty good, but still, like, they're missing DeGrom for a while, and it's hard to full on count on DeGrom even when he's back after the arm trouble he's been through. Max Scherzer is amazing, but he's old, and he's out for 8 weeks now. So I wonder if the Mets would be a team that the Cubs could target with one of these guys.
I mean, the fact that the Mets are as good as they are without DeGrom the whole year and now having lost Scherzer is kind of frightening, I think, for the rest of baseball.
Yeah, I mean they're good. They're good. They've paid for good players. They've kept the right guys. They've made, they're just a really good team. And the Padres and Dodgers, for people who may not be following other divisions as closely, they're just separated by a half game right now. They're I believe we got the Dodgers at 28-13 and the Padres at 28-14. So those are two real good teams out in the West too. It looks like the NL is basically 3 teams at the top, and then you probably have the 2 central contenders right behind there. But yeah, I think like it is weird with this Cubs team to watch a thing where we have so many starting pitchers now to consider, but so few locks, And Adbert Alzolay is a guy who you're going to have to find a spot for when he comes back too.
Right. Yeah, you almost forget about Alzolay.
Mm-hmm. And at this point, I think in some ways you almost have to, because I was so encouraged when I think it was might have even been at the end of Theo's time when they were talking about how they were considering Alzolay as a sure thing. Like, this is a starting pitcher now, coming in. This is a homegrown starting pitcher. But like, he is a guy who has had so many injuries through the minors and just hasn't stacked up innings. And now with this injury again, and I believe it's like a lat situation for him. I think it's hard. It's just hard to count on him being right. So it's like, you almost have to think of him as a bonus. Yeah. And speaking of that, remember Braylon Marquez?
I was just thinking that. Yeah. I mean, I remember, because was it like 19 or 20 that he came up late and had against the White Sox, I think, and didn't really pitch particularly well, but
yeah. He's had COVID multiple times. He's had trouble getting back into the country. He's had trouble with fitness. He's another guy who big left-handed arm, obviously throws over 100 from the left side. Could be, it's amazing stuff in there, but another guy where you're like, well, you have to prove it at some point. You have to get fit and produce and actually get on a mound at some point for the team to consider you as like a serious option going forward. And I think Alzolay's, he's busting his ass to come back, and Marquez is more of a wait and see kind of.
Right. What else sticks out from the past week? I mean, obviously, dropping 3 of 4 at Wrigley is never good, but especially against a team like the Diamondbacks, who aren't particularly great.
Yeah, they're like a surprise 500 right now, kind of.
Yeah,
But yeah, that's not good. It's just, I mean, I think we're just seeing this is more. I don't think the Cubs are as bad as they seemed 2 weeks ago. And they weren't as good as they seemed. When did it seem good, Adam? The first week? They're not as good as
it seemed good the first week, and then there's that brief stretch where they won 3 consecutive series and
5 of 7 or whatever.
Right, and 2 of those 3 series were against teams that are bad. The only one that was like genuinely impressive was taking 2 out of 3 in San Diego with big crowds and against a good team. But I mean, as we've said many times on podcasts this year, this is a season of like everyone deciding for themselves how much of this team they want to watch and how much they can put up with, and finding things that make watching them interesting. Like, I'm still at a point where I enjoy turning on the game when I have the opportunity, but I'm certainly not like changing around my plans to watch them every night, because I don't think that they are worthy of that, frankly.
Yeah, and I think the team, I think right now at exactly this point in the season, is about the true talent level, and if you're curious, with the 415 winning percentage, that tracks out to a 67 win season, and I think that seems about right now. And oof indeed, and it could get worse at the deadline, which you almost hope it does, because right now that would put them in line for the 7th pick in the draft, which is exactly, I think, what they have this year. And it sucks. A team of this caliber, in terms of money coming in, organization, all that stuff, a team of that caliber should never be this bad more than 1 year in a row. You should not be having to do that, to sell off to that degree. It's inexcusable. So whatever, but we say it's inexcusable, and it just keeps happening. And it's interesting this week as I watch, like, Bleacher Nation did a write-up on PJ Higgins, who's the catching prospect, who he's been in the organization for a while. He's hit great in AAA this year. He had a triple the other day, is that right?
Yeah, it was kind of his Taylor Davis moment in a big spot, bases loaded with, bases loaded, nobody out, and the previous two batters did not come through, and then he picked them up in a big way with a bases clearing triple, which has to feel pretty damn good.
Absolutely. And yeah, it was great to see. And I think and he's a really good athlete behind the plate, and he can play other positions if you need him to. But I think he's a guy where you'd rather he be catching. And then I saw, and this is not like a subtweet at Bleacher Nation or Brett Taylor or anything, but it was a big write-up on PJ Higgins and talking about like him going forward as a catching option and all that. And I'm down with all that, and that's fine. But in the context of just like the assuming Wilson Contreras is gone stuff, PJ Higgins just turned 29, Wilson Contreras just turned 30. So when we're talking about the future of the catching position, this guy is a year younger than a top 5 catcher in baseball.
Right.
Like, it drives me so bananas to just like be talking about like all these other things we could do to sort of, what if we went away from the best player on the team, who's still in his prime. And even Sahadev Sharma was writing about how teams have moved away. And this is more, I don't think this is him giving advice to move on from Contreras. This is just him sort of trying to make sense of how teams don't often pay for big bats at the catching position in recent years, which is somewhat true, somewhat not. Buster Posey and JT Realmuto also got pretty big deals, and those are big bats there. But like, there's just so much talk about like things. Well, what if they do deal Contreras? Where could they go? And I just like, I don't have time to think about that right now, because it's figuring out excuses for something that is inexcusable to begin with. You just like moving on from the one position on your field that is currently elite is catcher, like top of the line, and having Contreras and Gomes together is great. And I would be more in favor of like moving from, like if you have a PJ Higgins or whatever, great, he takes the Gomes spot later. But I am
completely, because that has value too. Yan Gomes has value.
Absolutely, he does. He's good, and he's done very well with working with pitchers. I've seen people writing up how he, the ERA difference with Gomes and Contreras, and Gomes could very well be better game caller, better receiver than Contreras. It seems like Contreras' framing has moved backwards a little bit again, which sucks. But also, like, I don't know, you can't, like, I watched Kyle Hendricks throwing to Wilson Contreras, and you can't blame any of those runs on Wilson Contreras. Like the game I was watching, that's silly. I don't think Yan Gomes would have talked the wind into blowing in. So like those stats aren't always what they seem. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's the other main thing I noticed this week, was just like more talk about like, what do we do when we choose to give up the one remaining position on the field where we're very good? And I'm just like, let's not do that.
Well, I mean, it remains to be seen what Kyle Hendricks' value might be, because as we've alluded to, he's kind of been all over the map in terms of performance. But at this point, would you, not that we should have to like make these choices, but
sure.
If I told you that the Cubs would in fact extend Wilson Contreras, but they would flip Hendricks, would you be okay with that, or is trading either of them something that just infuriates you?
It's a really good question, and it sucks that we are now making these sort of deals with ourselves, right? Like pitching ourselves these deals that shouldn't be necessary when you root for a team that is of the financial might that the Cubs are. If you're giving me two sub-ideal scenarios, would I take keeping Contreras, flipping Hendricks versus the opposite? Kyle Hendricks might be my favorite pitcher the Cubs have ever had, and I think I would, because I think, like, as consistent as Hendricks has been, he was elite in 2020. Last year was probably his worst year. I think it was pretty solidly his worst year. And this year we've seen the up and down of it. And he's not making a ton of money. So a contender should love to have Kyle Hendricks in your 3, 4, or 5 spot, depending on what the rest of your rotation looks like, even if it's this Kyle Hendricks going forward. So I think a real contender should still want that. But I think it's much more excusable when you are looking for, as we were talking about, starting pitching spots where you could be putting a Keegan Thompson, a Justin Steele, Alzolay, etc. I think it makes more sense to clear up a starting position and lock up the elite catcher you have through the rest of his prime in years that you better fucking be contending, which is the next like 3 years, let's say.
Yeah.
How about you? What's the deal? You would do the same thing?
Yeah, same thing. It's not any knock on Hendricks. I think that you just like particularly love him, perhaps even more than I do. But
I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite pitcher in Cubs history, would you say? There's a lot of good choices, which is
there are a lot of good choices. Yeah. And what I didn't realize until you tweeted about it was that that Kerry Wood game, the final game, was my birthday. Apparently, I didn't remember that having been the case.
I did not realize that either. Yeah,
but I would say probably either Wood or Lester.
Those are great picks. Yeah. You love that jersey,
or LaTroy Hawkins. Yeah.
LaTroy Hawkins, definitely. Yeah, my wife, as many people know the story, but when she was very new to baseball, we were watching the Cubs play at Shea Stadium in 2004. LaTroy came in, and she knew enough to say, "Oh no."
We were there. You and I were both there.
We were years before we met, but I think Kerry Wood and Kyle Hendricks are my favorite. But Carlos Zambrano, I got a Zambrano jersey. A lot of good.
Is there any reason that the Cubs can't jointly retire 34 for Wood and Lester? Why not do that?
No, I mean, because of the numbers, I mean, because
didn't they do that for Fergie and Maddox? Didn't they both wear 31?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, so it's like that's already a thing that's been done. So no, and I mean that seems great. I would want them each to get their own day, but I think it would be cool if they announced that, like, we're retiring this number. And like Lester is a Hall of Famer, should be Hall of Famer. Kerry Wood will not be, but I think like Kerry Wood is like a really interesting team specific sort of example of like I would be fine retiring it. And also just from a logistical standpoint, if you're retiring the number for Lester anyway, who gives a shit if the number's gone? Let's honor another guy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have much else. We got a couple more games against the Reds here. A lot of divisional games coming up. There are games against there's the crosstown games, I guess, coming up. The Cubs, White Sox soon, and then the Brewers and Cardinals, and then in a few weeks we will be in attendance to watch the Cubs play the Yankees, and I'm sure Yankees fans will just be really pleasant to be around given the trajectories of our teams.
I wonder how that will be. I wonder if there's any sort of olive branch with the Rizzo situation that they're like, hey, this is fine. I mean, it depends on, I don't know. Are we going to run into a bunch of Josh Donaldsons? Or are we going to run into a bunch of Aaron Judges? One or the other. I mean, it depends what the crowd makeup is.
Josh Donaldson is a fucking asshole.
He's a piece of shit. He's a dumb guy. He's a stupid man. Let's start there. He's also a coward. I really enjoyed, and if you don't know, basically Josh Donaldson, after having like several run-ins with the White Sox, like running into, like going after Lucas Giolito in a parking lot last year, and then this year, like a dirty tag play with Tim Anderson at third, and then apparently he derisively said, "Hey, Jackie," calling him, like referring to Jackie Robinson, and everyone found that to be racist,
including Aaron Judge, his teammate.
Yeah, Aaron Judge was like, that was it. He did. I think Aaron Judge didn't say "quote unquote" racist, but he called him out pretty specifically. I forget exactly the wording, but it was very clear that Aaron Judge was not about it and was not defending him at all. Was like, no, you shouldn't say that. And I thought Liam Hendriks weirdly had the best summation of it that I saw. White Sox closer, who's a really fun Australian, and he was just like, his excuse afterwards, Josh Donaldson's, was that like, oh yeah, I thought it was an inside joke because he referred to Jackie Robinson in a 2019 Sports Illustrated story. That likely story, Josh Donaldson, like you can read. We know you can't read. We know that. There's no way you read Sports Illustrated.
He only buys the body issue.
Yes, the body issue. This way he can read butts. That's it. So yeah, but Liam Hendriks was like, usually you have inside jokes with friends, not people you have a particularly bad relationship with.
Yeah.
Great point. And Liam Hendriks was also like, and I've talked to guys in 4 different clubhouses, and Liam Hendriks was in one of those clubhouses. I mean, he was in the A's organization for a bit. Donaldson used to be there back in the day, but he's like 4 different clubhouses. No one likes him, and I thought that's all you need to know.
And Tony La Russa was like, sick joke. I wish I had come up with it myself. Great job, Josh Donaldson.
Yeah. Tony La Russa called him racist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is like, I feel like that's all you need to know, really. And then John Heyman, awful baseball writer, was out there today saying La Russa, as not only a baseball coach, but a lawyer, should know to not use the R word without evidence. And it's like, motherfucker, that's not the R word. Are you saying racist? Like, you can, like, what are you doing, you dumb fuck? So yeah.
Oh boy.
I think that's the week in baseball, Adam. I think that's
yeah, these Twib notes got awfully chippy.
Yeah, there was a lot in there. So
there was. Well, fuck Josh Donaldson. That's evergreen. We say that regardless of how the Cubs are doing at any particular time.
We won the Rich Harden trade, turns out.
Yeah. Yes, we did. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I don't have anything else. I hope you don't have COVID. I hope you're at Wrigley Field next week.
Yeah,
I think it's part of the plan, right?
I would love to be. I have tickets to take my mom for her birthday on May 30th, the noon game against the Brewers, and that was my idea. All my brothers and their wives and my niece, my little goddaughter, who went to her first Cubs game and saw Justin Steele shove, which was
amazing,
lovely. So maybe they'll all go without me. We'll see. But yeah, fingers.
And you know what? If anyone ever took Kevin's mom's seat, if someone took Ev Pape's seat, you know what she would do? She would bring him a goddamn sheet cake. She would be fine with it. She would go get him concessions and sit elsewhere. She wouldn't make a whole stink.
Figure it out. But if someone spitefully tried to take my mom's seat, I'd throw him into the basket. So
love it.
Thanks for listening, everybody. At Away Games Pod on all the things, and we'll be back, and we'll do this again next week, whether you like it or not.